We have some more NHL signings to discuss today, including the Senators and Connor Brown coming to terms. We also have signings for teams like the Capitals, Islanders, and Canes, and the Leafs have made an interesting hire for their front office. We'll discuss all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more signings and hirings to discuss here today. Let's kick things off with the biggest news of the morning, with the Senators and Connor Brown coming to terms on a new contract, just barely avoiding their hearing of salary arbitration. Now, in the past, players and teams, once they were able to start the arbitration hearing, they could still negotiate all the way up until the point that the decision came down from the arbitrator on what the award was going to be on a contract, whereas this year that has changed. Once the hearing process has begun, then negotiations come to a stop. I believe the hearing was supposed to start at 9 o'clock Eastern time this morning. I know going into last night, there was still not much of an update on progress being made. There was a decent gap between the two sides. It was believed the player was asking around the $4 million mark for his contract, and the team was offering in the high twos. I think it was around 2.7 or 2.8 or something like that, which is a very normal process. When you go to these arbitration filings, sometimes you see what the player and the team are looking for, and there's a lot of eye rolling and a lot of questioning. But you got to think about this, that teams are trying to save money, players are trying to make money. It's just very normal for them to be like $1 million or more sometimes between each other in gaps. I mean, it's just the way it rolls. I've seen it, even recently, a $2 million gap. So oftentimes they end up bridging that gap somewhere near the middle, coming to terms, and away we go. So in the case of Connor Brown, who put up career highs of 43 points last year in an expanded role at the Senators after coming over from the Maple Leafs, he gets a 3-year contract at $3.6 million per year. And to be completely honest, I think this is pretty much a best case scenario for the Senators as well as their fans. They get a player who was fitted nicely after being acquired last year. Obviously, he proved that he could play a bigger role than he was given in Toronto, put up more points. But at the same time, you don't want to be tying up too long. Obviously, they have a lot of prospects coming up through the ranks here, many of which are going to be on entry-level contracts and looking for bigger money in a few years' time. So you want to be able to have cap flexibility that way as well, and roster flexibility too. So in this case, like I said, it's kind of the best of both worlds. A nice healthy balance. Brown gets a nice raise. The Senators don't get committed too long, and everything works out here. So great contract. I think it's fair for both sides. And from a Senators fan perspective, I think it's pretty much, like I said, a best case scenario. Now, they pretty much only have Chris Tierney left when it comes to their restricted free agents. Christian Yaros technically is on that list, but based on his posts I've seen on social media, it does look like he's come to terms with them, but they haven't announced anything yet, so not quite sure exactly when we'll see that, but we're assuming that there's an agreement in place. Now, when it comes to Brown, too, I think that the team likely did have something like this in mind they were willing to do, but they quite often, you see it being pushed right to the last minute before the arbitration hearing gets underway. They'll save their best offer for that, just to see if the player will buckle a little bit and accept a smaller amount. It's all about business and all about saving dollars if you're a team, and it's all about pushing hard to make the dollars if you're the player. So very normal process in that regard. When it comes to Chris Tierney, his hearing's not until November the 8th. So the Sens have plenty of time to get that contract sorted out, and I would fully suspect that they probably will come to a similar type of contract, probably maybe 2 or 3 year term. I would think in the case of Tierney, like Brown, they're really close to being eligible for UFA status and likely will be at the end of this next contract. So they're not going to want to commit too long, like I said, to block out other prospects, but at the same time, they're not going to want to walk them right to free agency as well. So we'll stay tuned on how they handle the Tierney contract. Now, the other hirings here I mentioned today are coming from a few other teams. The Washington Capitals have signed defenseman Jonas Sieganthaler to a 1-year contract at $800,000. He's slowly becoming a pretty important piece back there. Got into over 60 games last year. The Swiss left shot defenseman is proven to be more and more important all the time, and I can see him longer term being a pretty consistent, solid member in their top 4. He's a pretty valuable contract right now, so from a cap and financial perspective, it works well. But like I said, he's not a guy that's going to put up a lot of offensive numbers. Only had like 9 points in, I think, 62 games last year. But like I said, proven to be, more and more steady back there, earning himself a regular spot in the Caps defensive core. So pretty good signing there by the Washington Capitals. Now, we also saw the Islanders signed prospect forward A.J. Greer, who has been in the Avalanche system for a number of years, had limited NHL exposure, mostly time in the American Hockey League, where he actually put up some pretty decent stats. He has left the Avalanche organization after not being qualified and has signed a contract here for 1 year with the New York Islanders. The Islanders give him a 1 year, two-way deal. Of course, he gets $700,000 at the NHL level, and he gets a little bigger than normal AHL salary at $100,000. A lot of AHL salaries are $70,000 to $80,000, but usually the higher performers sometimes get $100,000 or more at times as well. So obviously, he's proven he can be a pretty solid minor league hockey player. We'll see if he gets any more of an opportunity at the NHL level with the Islanders than he did with the Avs, but either way, pretty low-risk signing and some extra added depth, if nothing else, for their AHL affiliate there in Long Island. Now, the Hurricanes have also made a couple of signings today. They signed goaltender Antoine Bibeau to a 1 year, two-way contract, league minimum there as well, $700,000 at the NHL level. Of course, that's just some extra added depth for their farm team. And they also signed center iceman Drew Shore, who's 29 years old and has had a few stints in the NHL, coming back now from the KHL, where he played last year and had a pretty decent season. We've seen him have stints before with teams like the Florida Panthers, the Calgary Flames, and the Vancouver Canucks briefly before. Limited NHL time, but he's got good size, 6'3", 205 pounds. Came out of the University of Denver with a lot of promise, was a fairly high draft pick. I believe he was a second-round pick a number of years back now. Obviously, he's 29, so that would have been probably looking at 11 years ago when he was drafted, but never really materialized into a solid NHL player, but has been a good minor leaguer, had some good success. Like I said, played well in the KHL last year, so we will see what happens in that regard. Obviously, he very well could end up playing in their minor league system. Difficult to say, but he'll certainly be another player fighting for a bottom six roster spot with the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the other interesting news that came out today was the Toronto Maple Leafs had an interesting hire. Former assistant GM to the Florida Panthers, Eric Joyce, appears to be being hired by the Toronto Maple Leafs for what they're calling a position of Director of Hockey Strategy. Now, this appears to be a new position. It's not a title I've seen around the NHL before. It obviously seems like something new that they've kind of created here to bring in an executive that they were obviously fond of and trying to find a way to get him to work in their front office in some capacity. Back when Dale Talon got booted up to be the president and Tom Rowe was GM there briefly in Florida, he was one of their assistants and seemed to be doing quite a bit, handling a lot of responsibilities. Tom Rowe was more of a figurehead, and his assistant GMs pretty much did all the work, is what we're kind of led to believe based on that stint of management time there in the Panthers organization. But he seems to have a military background, known for have a really sharp mind is what I've read up on him. Somebody who's really good at debating and getting his points across and kind of being an influencer. So something that I know those are types of things that Kyle Dubas seems to value for his staff. So we'll see how that works out. I'm not sure exactly what his duties are going to be. I mean, Director of Hockey Strategy is a pretty broad label, broad term, so I'm not sure exactly what they're going to get him to do, but obviously they value him as I said, somebody who's a really smart hockey guy, and they're trying to find a way to incorporate him into their staff. So we'll have to wait more details. I don't believe the Leafs have officially announced that at this point, but many NHL insiders and different outlets are reporting that they do have an agreement in place to hire him for that new created role within their front office. So we'll wait more details and see what the Leafs have to say once that announcement becomes official. So that is all your updates here for now. I'd like to be back up a little bit later with some additional videos later today discussing any other additional signings, news, rumors, etc. around the NHL, so stay tuned for that later on today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.